digital something.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sure.
All right, so I will let you go and I will change slides as you ask me to do so.
Okay, I am Harry
Yeah,
Osborn.
please.
I am Harry Osborn. This is my first time for coming to the Callaway Family Association. So thank you for your warm hospitality. I have enjoyed meeting everybody. And as part of that, I have been talking with individuals about various aspects of DNA. And so I have actually updated the slide deck. And so hopefully I've answered a lot of questions that I've been getting over the past few days. We'll have Q&A at the end. I am, as from the front slide, I am Harry Osborn. I go back to Peter, I think. More about that. You'll see why I say I think. So it's Peter. I am kit number 414693 and am indeed in the Peter group. Okay? So a huge thank you. Revis has been doing a huge amount of work on the DNA project anyway, and I know that Les and Warwick have Les and Warwick have spent a huge amount of time in England, and I understand there were 3 women also that spent a huge amount of time in England. And thank goodness all of these people did. I just found out about the 3 women. When I go to do research, I tend to look for what I want. What these people did was they threw the net wide, and they just scooped up every piece of information they could without realizing what they were getting. They didn't know what the significance was. Because of DNA, we can now see much more of the significance of the information that these people collected. From a DNA perspective and from a family perspective, we owe them huge debt. It is incredible. I also want to say thank you to all the people and families who have done DNA testing, and that's any kind of the DNA testing, and joined the Callaway Family Project. That second part applies to if you've done Y testing within FTDNA. We'll talk more about that. Also, thank you to all the families who have contributed their research and their trees, ideally online somewhere where we can all benefit from them. It's interesting that we each have a different piece of the puzzle. And it's when we take our little piece, which we know, we take our little piece and combine it with all of the other pieces that we get the Callaway story. It really is a joint effort from everybody. So thank you to the people who have contributed their research in their trees, and also thank you to people who have donated money specifically to the FTDNA Big Y project. FTDNA stands for Family Tree DNA. It's the company that we use for the Y testing. As far as I know, they may be the only company that does Y testing. I'll explain more about that when we go. But thank you for the money, the monetary donations. We have a wide range of income levels. And so, there are people that would like to participate but just don't have the money. And so thank you, seriously, for your contributions. And that's the picture of the Callaway Family Project on FTDNA. That's the little Family Tree DNA, that's their little logo. The Callaway page, there's a running dialogue that goes on, and then over here is a little menu where we can go into the various DNA results. Okay? Now, as we start to talk about DNA, I think it's important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start general, about DNA in general, and then we'll zero in on Callaway's and Peter and Joseph. So I'm starting very broad. So why would you want to do DNA testing? This information did not come from anything. It's just my experience, okay? So determined paternity is probably the #1 reason, or adoption. I'm willing to bet that of the people that I have interacted with, probably 20% are trying to find their parents, they're trying to find their children. I think the milkman might be my dad. So those are probably the top 2 reasons to do DNA testing. Hobby, I just like it, and I kind of fall into that category. I love working with DNA. I love working with genealogy and family trees, contributing to the Callaway family history. And then there's a when we start talking about the big Y test, we are actually contributing not just to the Callaways, but to humans. It goes literally, it goes clear back to Adam and Eve. And so we're contributing our piece to the giant puzzle. Now, there are a lot of concerns as to why you would not want to do DNA testing. There may be additional reasons beyond what I've got here, but these are the ones that popped into my head. Insurance. Oh, I'm gonna take a DNA test. It's gonna show that I have a particular disease or I'm susceptible to a particular disease and I won't be able to get insurance. There's no sharing it that I know of with insurance companies. That's not an issue. So that is actually not a concern. What if my employer finds out? If I have particular health concerns, the employer may not want to hire me. I could lose a job opportunity. Employers don't have access to your information unless you specifically tell them or specifically give it to them. But if you take an ancestry test, your employer doesn't have access to it, or a potential employer. So that's actually not a reason. Law enforcement is a big one. I don't want law enforcement getting their hands on my information. Generally speaking, that's not true. Now, there are ways they can go to the courts and they can get some records. That is true. And I'll be honest, if somebody in my family murdered somebody, here's my DNA. I don't want to have a murderer out running around. And so that is a bit of a concern. I think it's grossly overstated. It's pretty much there are protections in there. You've got to go to the court. The information is not just freely accessible. I don't want my personal information out in the cloud, out in the web, out in the whatever. You can control your personal security on your results. And so if you want the information to be public, you can make it public. If you want it to be private, you can make it private. So you have control over that. And the last one is my favorite. You discover unwanted information both directions. My dad did not know who his dad was, and he died not knowing, and it was his greatest shame. Since his death, I discovered who his dad was because of a first cousin match. A first cousin match popped up, and it's like, I don't know Carolyn. Let's go look at Carolyn's tree. There's dear old grandpa. Oh, wait a minute, let me go into genealogy mode. And he lived 2 blocks from grandma. Okay. And then I found out that there were two of Dad's brothers, half-brothers, were still living. Knock, 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 knock. I gave them a little warning, but I went up and I met them. So you don't know who's going to show up on your doorstep. And we had a wonderful conversation. I met the 2 of them. We talked for several hours, and finally I said, so what are you guys thinking about all of this? And they looked at each other and said, sounds like Dad. Yeah, so going the other direction, I had a 4th cousin DNA match. Turned out she was my first cousin's daughter that she had put up for adoption. And we ended up, both parties, I acted as an intermediary. They wanted to meet each other. I put some safeguards in place for that. And we met, and it was one of the most moving experiences of my life when mother and daughter were reunited. Fortunately, my cousin had warned the other kids, okay, you've got a daughter or a sister that's running around out there. So fortunately, the family was warned. So anyway, so those are the basic things to think through when you want to get a DNA test. Okay. So there are a variety of places that you can test, and I'll talk a little bit more about these in future slides. What I wanted to show was people say, as I've talked with people here as well as elsewhere, people say, yeah, you know, I got a DNA test. I don't know where I got it. I don't know what level or what kind of test it was, but yeah, I had it. So tell me who my great grandfather was. It's like, okay, that's not really enough to go on. And so this slide, hopefully the slide deck will go on the CFA site. It can be a reference.
It's been requested, so we'll make it happen.
Okay, good. I wanted to include the basic providers here. So this is MyHeritage, and your screen would look kind of like that. You've got the MyHeritage logo. This is FTDNA. You've got the chromosomes up at the top. So that's FTDNA or family tree DNA. Over here is Ancestry. Just out of curiosity, how many people interact with either Ancestry or Ancestry DNA? Yep, a lot. And over here is 23andMe. And so these are the basic providers. Maybe that might trigger some people to say, oh yeah, that screen looks familiar. Now I know where my test is, and I can go look at my results. Okay. FTDNA, standard question. If I do an FTDNA, I did not include the other providers, but FTDNA is the main focus of our Callaway family project. This is basic FTDNA information. The maternal test is also known as the mitochondrial DNA. I'll be honest, it's very difficult to work with because records are generally in the father's name, and often the mother is not even mentioned. I'm thinking of back in the 1960s, like I have obituaries that I was telling someone else here about this, but Mrs. John Smith died. Mrs. John Smith didn't have a name. That's all it said. Mrs. John Smith died. She's going to be buried on such and such date in such and such cemetery. So, okay, who are you? We don't know. Women, the information on women, unfortunately, is extremely limited. So I would throw the mtDNA, which stands for mitochondrial DNA, I would throw that into an advanced category. Family, this is an autosomal DNA test. It looks at the first 22 chromosomes only. You get half from your mom, half from your dad. This is equivalent to the Ancestry test or the MyHeritage test. In FTDNA, it's called Family Finder. This is the paternal ancestry. So this is that one comes in two flavors, Y and big Y. The Ys, I'm going to throw this out. The Ys look at something called STRs. Don't ask me what that stands for. The big Y looks at SNPs, SNPs. And actually, Revis mentioned this when she talked a couple days ago. And so I think of it as one slices the Y chromosome vertically and the other slices it horizontally. The tests look at it completely different. So it's the Y tests and the big Y test. And then, actually, this is the big Y. These are the Y tests. Right. No, this is the big Y and these are the Ys. If you have taken a Y test through FTDNA, you can upgrade it. People would do that because I'm going to take a test and I really don't know if I'm going to get any matches. So why do I want to spend a lot of money if I don't know if I take the test, I may get 0 matches. Like, well, that was a bunch of money that was wasted. So what a lot of people will do is they'll start at a lower level, perhaps Y20. I would start at least Y37, maybe 67. You can then upgrade based on your matches. Okay, this is worthwhile. Okay, I'm going to upgrade to a higher Y test, which is what these are, and the cost to upgrade. And then you can upgrade to the big Y 700. So there is a path for upgraded tests.
And upgrading, you don't have to submit a new sample. They literally take the sample you've got.
Yeah, odds are very good that you would not, thank you. Odds are very good that you would not submit another sample. They keep the samples on file, And then if you choose to upgrade it later, they can just reuse the same sample. Okay, so the 4 basic providers are here. I want to be clear, I'm talking about the DNA side. I'm not talking about the trees side, the genealogy side. That would be a whole separate conversation from what we're doing here. So FTDNA, the big pros are specialized testing. The Y test and the mtDNA test, the mitochondrial, are only available, as far as I know, through FTDNA. You cannot get those through Ancestry or the others. And the tests, I'll hit that, I guess I'll do columns. So the family finder is equal to the others, looking, it's called autosomal DNA, chromosomes 1 to 22. You get half from mom, half from dad. The Y, chromosome 23, if it's XX, you're a girl. If it's XY, you're a boy. So if you're a boy, you can do the Y test, and you have to be male. It's not available to women to take at all, unless you get your brother or an uncle or something like that. But only men can do that. And then the Y111, the Y67, I just said YDD. Those are the STRs, and these are the SNPs or SNP. The STRs are included. If you want your detailed haplogroup, that comes through the big Y. So Adam had a son, actually had 2 sons and then a third, and so on, all the way down to us. Any given male in any given branch will have mutations. When the mutations are significant enough, they get a haplogroup designation. That mutation then will be passed on to every single son. Okay, so it's pretty easy. Let me look for that mutation. Okay, I know who had that, roughly. And then before that, they didn't have it. They had different haplogroups. So all of these mutations in your line, you carry those haplogroups too. Although it's usually shortened to what's my most recent haplogroup. FTDNA, on their family finder test, they will now guess what your haplogroup is. That's the plus. So this is on the family side, family finder side, chromosomes 1 to 22. They will estimate what your haplogroup is. The problem is it was your haplogroup like 10,000 years ago. So it's not terribly useful. It gives you a little bit of information, but not much.
I'm sure you can find paper records to that.
Yeah, you can find the paper records, yeah.
Stone.
Just go to the Adam and Eve library.
The censuses were on stone tablets, but we're looking.
Exactly. Okay, 2 types of DNA. There's the standard double helix that people are probably aware of. That's where the 23 chromosomes are. Chromosomes 1 to 22, and then the 23rd is XX or XY. Separate from that, totally separate from that, every single cell also has mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is considered to be the energy powerhouse for the cell. It's in every single cell of our bodies. The mother passes the mtDNA to both males and females. We all carry our mom's mtDNA. Males do not pass it, though, only the mother. And so when we talk about following the mother's line, that's where the mtDNA comes in. Okay. Ancestry, the advantage of Ancestry, it's by far the largest database. That includes the most trees, the most research records, the biggest DNA database. Ancestry is the big elephant in the room. They also provide a feature on the tree side called through lines for the most recent common ancestors. And so they, based on your tree, your information, combined with lots of records and other trees, they will tell you, here are your parents, here are your grandparents, here are your great-grandparents. You can click on anybody in your pedigree, that's called your pedigree, you can click on anybody in your pedigree and it will pop up all of the DNA matches that you have that support that person. It's actually quite cool. It's an autosomal test, the first 22 chromosomes. MyHeritage, the database is similar to Ancestry, but both the DNA side and the research side are smaller. But I will say on the family tree functionality is better. What I'm specifically thinking of is pictures. Ancestry will let you tag pictures in their tree. However, you cannot put in specific tags. You can't point. So if you've got like a beautiful group picture, you can't point to the individuals. All you get is a list of names. And so I use Ancestry for research, but my tree is in MyHeritage. If you look at my tree in Ancestry, it's a bunch of names with no supporting documentation. MyHeritage, that's where all my pictures, my records, everything is taken care of. 23andMe is another player. 23andMe's niche is really for health. And so if you want to know what major diseases, for example, that you may be subject to, 23andMe will tell you. So people tend to not put their trees out there, family trees. It's not used for genealogy. 23andMe's niche really is health. Okay? So let me, this is a nice graphic. I want to give the credit to DNAexplain.com. So this is called your patrilineal line. So it says brother, but I'm going to say me, my dad, my granddad. This is the patrilineal line. And that's what the Y test is looking at. Okay, dad, granddad, great-granddad, all the way back on the patrilineal line. Similarly, on the female line, on the mother's side, that's the matrilineal line, and so you've got a dog. Actually, it's either one, and then the mother and the grandmother and the great-grandmother, and so it gets a little confusing because the mitochondrial DNA is the energy of the cell. Okay, that's what the mother hands in this carried down. But you can get your X chromosome from either your mom or your dad, and so that's why this is kind of split here. Okay, and then in the middle, that's all the autosomal as well as the two ridges. All of that is autosomal. Because you get 50% from mom and dad, roughly 25% from each of the grandparents, 12.5% on back, it dilutes. And so the autosomal DNA is only good for roughly 6 to 8 generations. And then it's so diluted that it's a very limited value. Okay. In contrast, the Y and the mtDNA goes back to Adam and Eve. Time frames are completely different.
The Y?
Yep. The Y and the mtDNA. Yep. So that's important. If you're thinking about doing DNA testing, you want to think about, well, what am I interested in? Am I interested in who my cousins, second cousins, third cousins, my immediate family, stuff that I can actually support with records? Okay, well then that would say autosomal testing. If I'm interested in longer time frames, then that's the Y testing and the mtDNA testing. Okay. On the autosomal DNA, so here's me, self. If I do a DNA match, it's called centimorgans. So when the DNA is evaluated, this is the autosomal, when the DNA is evaluated, it looks for percent of overlap. And so if I were tested and a parent was tested, on average, there would be 3487 centimorgans with a range of 3330 to 3720. Okay? So if you do a test and it sees that your overlap is in, let's say 3500, if it says that your overlap is 3500, that's how it comes back and says, oh, this is a parent-child relationship. Okay? If I am looking at, I'm going to come over here, if I'm looking at a fourth cousin match, so here I am, and I'm going to look at a fourth cousin, if on average I would have 35 centimorgans overlap with a range of 0 to 127. So if the centimorgan overlap comes back in this range, you're going to see Ancestry or the others say, we're going to estimate that you're fourth cousins. That's what they're doing. They're just following they're just following a table. However, if you'll notice, especially out here and down here, there's a lot of overlap. Okay, they'll make a stab at it, but this chart explains kind of how it gets to relationships. Does that make sense? Okay. If you join, so there are a couple of steps in here. So within mtDNA, there are family projects. And so you can actually join the Callaway. Let me back up. I want to hit this a different way. So let's say you do a regular Y test of some sort. And it comes back and it has these names. It's like, oh, I have no idea how I am related to these people. I don't understand. But in my case, I had an overwhelming number of Callaways. Like, okay, well, let me go out and look. Excuse me. Is there a Callaway family project? Sure enough, there was. And so I went out and I joined the Callaway family project. Similarly, if you have a lot of Smiths, then you would look for a Smith family project. Okay, so and in my case, I had some other names, some codes, COAD, and some other names. I went ahead and joined their family projects. It doesn't cost, joining family projects does not cost anything. It's included in the product. So you join them, you look to see then kind of which group are you part of. These are the small ones within the Callaways. I've got more pictures later on. But it will kind of position you with people that you're probably related to. And the spreadsheet's available. Okay, so that's just a taste of the difference between the autosomal DNA and the Y DNA. Okay, next, please. Big Y is growing. This says August 2023, 70,000 tests. I think I just read there are over 100,000 tests now. So the database is not huge. And so when you sign up for a big Y test, it is a fairly big expense for a lot of people. Just be aware the database is growing and you're contributing to hopefully your family and the human tree, and it will continue to grow. And as it gains traction, you can see that the growth is accelerating. And so we will get more and more information. Okay, so that's enough of the kind of generic stuff. As I have participated in Callaway stuff, there's always a big question. Are Joseph and Peter brothers? And so in case people are not aware, when you go into the Callaway family project, the two largest groups are Joseph and Peter. And then there are a lot of other Callaways, kind of scattered, but the numbers are fairly small in the spreadsheet. And so they're both kind of in the same geographic area, Earth, and they're both kind of in the same area, same age. And one was 1640, one was 1680. That's close. And so they must have been brothers. And there are a lot of trees out there that show Joseph and Peter as brothers. Well, I have bad news. So this is I'm going to look at Peter first, and then I'm going to look at Joseph. So down here is Adam, and he was cryptically named A1. And then a deviation, I'm gonna come down here, a mutation occurred, and it was a significant mutation, and so the C branches occurred. Probably everybody in here is an R branch, just to let you know. If you're a Peter or a Joseph line and you're male, you would be an R. So that's kind of where we're going. But here's the C break off. Then the line continues, here, major break, F, GHIJK occurred. Our patrilineal ancestors continued. Here's India. I just learned that India was a separate island that crashed into Europe. I didn't know that. Anyway, so here's the ancestors coming through. Okay, now we have a K2 branch, a P branch. We're coming down through China. Somebody earlier said I've got some Chinese showing up in ethnicity.
I've got one Chinese guy up back there somewhere.
Yeah, you could have something from this kind of hanging on. Okay, it's possible. You know, things get buried down in the chromosomes.
Do you know about how far back you are now at that point? By the time you get
I don't have this date. Adam was about 150,000 BCE, before the Common Era. So that would be 152,000 years ago. Okay, so this journey is 152,000 years roughly. Okay, so again, just to contrast that, when we look at the autosomal, that's only 5, 6, 7, 8 generations, and then it's diluted. The Y goes all the way back. Okay, the mitochondrial DNA has a similar map to this, although I don't have that. I don't have that in the deck. So then he continues. Here's P. Here's R. So this is our R ancestor, and we are. If you're a Callaway, you are part of the R line. We come through. We're going through Eastern Europe. We're going through Germany, and then again, this is specific to Peter. And this far ago, it's kind of interesting. England, you can see the top of it here, and the Ireland's over here. It was kind of connected, you know, because of the ice age and whatever the sea level was. And so our ancestors crossed over, and they're in England. We have I'll break it to you. We have a Kendall match in Dorset, England, down in the tail of England. And this is me, roughly in the same area. So down here in Cornwall, Devon, and Dorset, there are lots of Callaways and there are lots of Kendalls, along with others, but they don't count. Okay, so this is what the Y test begins to give us. We can really do some serious tracking. It is not, and at this point we start to realize surnames are kind of irrelevant. You know, adoptions change names, oops change names, other things change names, people voluntarily change names, but the DNA stays. You can't change the DNA, at least not yet.
So what kind of time period are we talking about from Adam? 150,000 years?
Yep. Yeah. 150,000 before the Common Era. That's scientific notation.
And again, would you define FTDNA?
Yeah, family tree DNA. So sometimes I seem to be able to get out to the website with FTDNA, and sometimes I have to go familytreedna.com.
Is Globe Tracker the entity that provides this information?
The Globe Tracker is a brand new product. It's only a couple of months old that FTDNA has released. They produce it based on the Big Y test. You don't get this with the Y tests. You only get this with the Big Y test. Okay? Part of why Big Y is more expensive.
What's Big Y versus small y?
The Y tests look at the STRs. They look at the Y chromosome in a very particular way, and you can get how many data points do I want to look at? Do I want to look at 12, 25, 37, 111, okay, so of course each one is more expensive. So it looks, I'm gonna say, it looks at the Y chromosome vertically. Okay, big Y looks at SNPs or SNPs. Don't ask me to explain what that is because I can't, I just know it's there. And that kind of looks at the Y chromosome entirely differently, and it's looking at SNPs. From a time frame perspective, the SNPs are considered to be much, much more reliable than the STRs. So this is why big Y is better than the regular Y test. Okay? This is the Peter group. So I'm diving down into a little bit. I took this screenshot like 2 days ago. Just a word on what you're seeing, you'll see kit numbers. I'm one of the co-administrators for the Callaway Family Project. Privacy, personal information is very important to us, and so you won't see any actual living people's names anywhere in these slides.
That's column 2, is that the kit number?
Yeah, that's the kit number. And so this is the Peter group. You can see everybody going back, claiming that they go back to Peter Callaway. Although there, except for this oddball guy.
Huh?
Harry?
That would be Harry Osborn. That would be me. Okay, 414-693, that's my kit number. And I say I go back to William Bastine Kendall. Kimballs, lots of variations, just like the Callaways. And so I have the records that I can go back, trace back to William Bastine Kendall, born in 1774, and he lived in Osborn Township in Pennsylvania. But I know I'm part of Peter, so that's part of my mystery, is how do I get back to Peter? I've got some clues that will show up later. So this gives you a sense of the number of people that are currently tested within, from the Callaway family, within the Peter Callaway group. If they're red, that tells me that they have done a Y test. If they're green, haplogroup. If they're green, that tells me they've done a big Y test, because it's the big Y that gives you the haplogroup. So we've got a couple of us that are in the FGCs, and then there's that, I don't know why that's green, it should not, that 269 should be red. The BY is the two other descendants from Peter that have done big Y testing, and I will not share their names. So, again, because I could hear somebody's, there are people in the room who know who they
If I
are.
understood you to clarify, because if you were on the Joseph line, mine would be in there. The third column, literally the person who takes the test enters that data. And
That's
says,
right,
I'm a Peter Callaway.
right,
But there's nothing necessarily in the DNA that by itself, but that designated that description. It's the individual said, I'm a Peter Callaway, and then voila, the match to the haplogroup says, yes, you are, your DNA would confirm. I'm
Right.
sure there are others out there in FTDNA that have Peter Callaway, but they didn't come in here.
right,
And others that
Yes.
thought they were a Kindle,
right.
and lo and behold, they pop into this group. So-
Right, so when I went through this, really, I just briefly mentioned it. When you do a Y test or a big Y test, there's a separate step to actually join the Callaway project. If they've taken the test, and there are lots of them out there, unless they've joined the Callaway project, they won't show up here. Okay, so if you do a Y test, if you do a big Y test, please join the Callaway project. Okay, and I think I added a slide in here for that.
Could Peter the Great be in there?
Peter the Great.
I've seen some well-known people, some famous people. I have not seen his name in our line. But maybe, actually, in my book, he is Peter the Great. I should have just started with that. Oh well. So just to repeat what Don said, this column is typed in by the tester this column is also entered by the tester. But this kind of gives us a sense that it might, the common ancestor might be Peter. And then when we look over here, at the very top there are kind of the averages for this group. And then here are the individual results. If it's red, it's one step, I may have this backwards, but if it's red, it's one step higher than the average. If it's lower, it's one step below the average. These things are evolving over time, and so it gives you, it says that particular STR, that particular STR has changed, this particular STR has changed 14 times. So that's what's going on in there. And then based on how all of that matches, you get, or gets analyzed, you get put into a group. And so the software seems to think, forget this, from a DNA perspective, the FTDNA software thinks these people are all together.
So if there's a lot, like you've got one there that has 4 red ones.
Yeah.
If there's quite a few that are different than the average, does that tell us anything? Like
Yes, yeah. But there's a higher order piece to that. These change, these are in order of how quickly they change over time. This rarely changes. This barely changes. But these are increasing rates of change. And so you get out here, and if I had shown the 111, they go way out. The further out they are, they're changing quicker and quicker and quicker. And so this is not a huge surprise because those are quickly changing. The fact that these are not, that they match, indicates that they're slower moving as part of the same group. Does that make sense?
Yep. And thank you for that, because I got this report, I'm like, great, I got a bunch of numbers behind it. What does that mean? Do I get a grade in A, B, or C based on my test results? I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
the numbers themselves don't
Mean anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just how do they relate to the other
Got it.
numbers.
That helps.
They probably are, although it's the difference between the STRs and the SNPs, those number changes are feeding into the SNPs. It's going to point to haplogroup changes. Okay, so this is for the 2 Callaways. No, this is BY39130. Can you back up a slide?
Sure.
And here's BY39130, and the one at the top is BY39130. Okay, so I just picked on the 2 Callaway, the 2 Big Y Callaway testers. Okay, and the Big Y software gives you a story about BY39130. A couple of pieces. The patrilineal line was formed when it branched off FGC 43442, and the rest of mankind around 1600 CE. CE is Common Era. So that tells us around 1600, which is shortly before Peter.
Yeah.
That's shortly before Peter. Now there's a range, but they're guessing around 1600. There was a mutation that created the BY39130 haplogroup. Okay, that can feed into, okay, how are these people related? Especially when you're trying to match results. Results in terms of matches. There are two, and those are the 2 Big Y testers. And they report that they're from England. The man who is the most recent common ancestor, actually I thought I was not saying that quite right. So the BY occurred about 1850. Okay, the predecessor, the one before, was 1600. Okay, so you get to 1850, wait a minute, this is somewhere downstream from Peter 1640. Okay, which is why we were encouraging people to test, so we can start to refine that. And there's a chart I'll show you, a graph that I'll show you a little later will explain that a little better. So you get a story on your haplogroup. And although it's off the screenshot, you can actually look at other haplogroups within this. Joseph. Now, Africa is down here. I chopped off that whole Africa, China, Russia, Eastern Europe, okay? All of that is the same between Joseph and Peter.
And a whole bunch of other people.
And a whole bunch of other people. Up until RL151 is the name of that haplogroup. That's the common ancestor between Peter and Joseph. At that point, they went different paths.
Now, where is that? Is that East Germany?
I see Czech Republic.
Czech Republic?
In Germany, in that area.
Huh.
Austria.
Yeah. Germany.
Yeah. There we
So the science seems to be saying, and science is always subject to change as they learn more, but at this point, it seems to be saying that the branch between Joseph and Peter occurred roughly 3000 BCE. So that's 5,000 years ago.
They're probably not brothers.
Or a lot of birthday presents.
Yeah.
A lot of goo-goos. So and then from that point, so here's L151. The Joseph line, it appears, kind of decided that the French Riviera was a nice place to go, and maybe a little bit here in Spain.
I assume that it's moving south as opposed to north.
Yeah, the Joseph line moved south, and then they came up, and then they went across the land bridge into England. And so the Joseph descendants that have been tested, at least so far, all seem to have haplogroup RZ209. The Peter group doesn't have it. So this. Remember, we carry every one of these haplogroups. It's not that I'm the terminal one. It's I have all of these if I'm Joseph. So yeah, 3000 BCE is the estimate for L151.
So at what
About
point,
5,000 years ago.
that when they crossed in France or wherever and went down, and then came back up, what point was that cross? That looks like it could be around.
I could look up the
like
dates, but I
Normandy
don't,
and
I don't
stuff
have
like
them.
that, right?
I don't have
Okay.
them handy. I just took.
You
I
just
was-
did the other one, okay.
Yeah, I just looked for the
Okay.
where did they break apart. So,
So we're starting from Africa, we're working our
right,
way
yeah,
out.
yep,
So we're coming from China,
yep,
going through Eastern European,
yep,
and then right down, and then going back up.
yep. So both Peter and Joseph ancestors made the same mistake. My goal is to go from Africa to England, but no, I'm going to go through Saudi Arabia and India and China and Eastern Europe, and
So it's like
they're much more direct routes.
they got to Spain and they couldn't get over the mountains.
Exactly.
So they went north.
You're exactly right. Mountains got in the way. There were ice ages in
Wars.
here. I mean, look at there were wars, there were ice ages, there were all sorts of things that impacted where people went.
Yeah, we're all trying to escape from draft.
I don't, okay. I'm not
We're
going
escaping
there.
from the draft because of all the military complex and all the fighting that's going on, and you happen to be a serf, and guess what? You're private serf. That's what you are.
Yeah.
And you could be dead tomorrow.
Yeah, and here's your
Right.
pitchfork.
That's exactly right. And that would be, life would be really hard,
Life was very hard.
really hard.
Yeah.
And then you
And
die.
so these
And we're
tiny-
still rolling the dice getting up north.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so what this path is doing is showing the Peter and the Joseph routes. There are lots of other routes.
Okay, so
All over the
now the
planet.
group that's over on the far right,
Yep.
I'm assuming they break off and they move east
Yep.
and come to North America through the
Yeah.
Alaskan connection. They can walk
And,
across.
No,
they can
by
walk-
ship.
They can walk across the ice up there.
Yeah, so you're right, the Native American
Yeah.
population, I don't have their
Yeah.
exact path, but yeah, they would have come up through
Yeah.
Africa and probably gone through that and then
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
Russia, Alaska. And then the same thing, I showed going to the south of China, some of them went down to Philippines and Australia.
Okay.
You know, in the time frames that we're talking about, these are tens and hundreds of thousands of years ago. There were land bridges there, and so they just walked.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so big difference between the autosomal thinking and big white
So
thinking.
Harry, let me ask you a quick question. Obviously, there was nobody there seeing this. How do we know that RL-151, that they were located there at that time? Because there's a concentration of other families that have that same. So how do we know that's where they were at? Because are you going
Bodies.
back testing DNA from?
Body,
Really?
dug up bodies.
Okay.
Really?
Dug up bodies from long ago, and they do their whatever testing, and they can figure out when the person lived, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and so they're doing this work on skeletons.
I
And we
think
get
they're
DNA out of those.
recovering most of the DNA through their teeth.
That's a piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting lots of different and DNA is moving at such an incredible rate. You mentioned forensic DNA this morning. It used to be you had to have a hair follicle in order to identify the DNA. Now you just need a little tiny piece of hair. You don't need the follicle anymore. And so there are huge advancements being made in DNA. And so how they can work with hairs or skeletons or whatever is just incredible. So, yeah, if you want to join Joseph and Peter, you're going to have to do a heck of a lot of genealogical work and make your tree really big to go back 5,000 years. That's a lot of records, Diane. Well, we may need to work on doing this in the cloud. It might be bigger than the computer.
Like a movie said, Callaway went, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this is the Joseph line. It's a little smaller in terms of number of testers, and actually I want to emphasize that. So we've got something like 100,000 big Y tests globally. That's kind of pretty minuscule. So things can get weighted. Don't read, oh, the Peter group is bigger, so there are more Peter Callaway descendants. This is just number of testers. Okay, so different things. So here's Joseph. The Joseph group could stand with a little bit more testing. So the two main groups are the BY group, which I can't read, and the FT group, and they are actually right in line with each other. So it's not, you could think about them as being the same. They're right in line. There was a mutation that occurred. I don't remember which way it went, but let's say the FT had a mutation, and then that started the BY line. So they're together. There's not much to go off on the Joseph line. And so when I get to the slide I want to get to, you'll see how we can work with the Peter line. We cannot at this point do it with the Joseph because we don't have enough testers. We need more big Y testers for Joseph in order to do that.
I was hoping I could find my kit number. I don't have it readily available. One of those big Ys is mine.
Okay.
And one of the other ones would be Russell Callaway, so I don't remember which is which.
Actually, I'm going to guess you're the top one because I think you said an ancestor is James C.
It is?
Just a guess. I don't know.
Might be. And that kit number doesn't sound familiar. I don't remember. That's got a B in front of it or something. Oh, yeah, that's not me. I think I would have listed as Joseph.
Okay.
But there's a bunch of those. So it's got to be probably one of the bottom, the middle two there or
Yeah.
something. I'm not sure.
Again, I don't know why they did it.
15745.
I don't know why FTDNA did this, but the P25 and the M269, you'll notice all these 269s, that should have been read also. Those are tens of thousands of years ago. Those are not meaningful.
And I will tell you, so probably, and I don't know, looking at the matches, I'm thinking maybe the 15745 was mine. That sounds vaguely familiar. And Russ may be the one right next to me.
My brother's in there too.
Yeah. Oh.
Ah,
Remember, I
okay,
gave
right,
you- I
right.
think
So
I
he's
gave you-
one of these.
Yeah, I think I gave you his
Uh,
kit
uh,
number.
I saw his kit number, I don't know whether he joined the project, the
Yeah.
thing, the Callaway thing. Okay,
Yes, I
good.
So over what, the past century, this information is being discerned? I mean, you said it's 150,000 years old.
Right.
But they're really discovering this in the last 100 years.
Right. So what they're doing is they're looking at the STR values, which is what all those numbers are off to the side, and it says, okay, this group of people, in this case we're looking at Joseph Callaway, forget the Joseph Callaway though, this group of numbers look like they are all related, and then anecdotally, or based on records, people have self-reported, I go back to Joseph Callaway. Okay, so it in this case it's largely based on the terminal, the last haplogroup, but you carry all of them, so it's important to keep that in mind.
So Harry, how is there a way with more testing, particularly on the Joseph line, we can use this to help solve the mystery of the England Joseph connection?
Hold on 3 minutes. I'll answer part of that.
All right.
Don mentioned this. There are some other smaller groups that don't seem to fit based on the DNA. Forget about this stuff. Based on the DNA, there are some smaller groups. We don't have enough testers. We don't know what to do with them yet. But they don't quite fit the DNA for Peter or the DNA for Joseph line. Okay. So here's the story. You can see we've got a break at about 1250, and the most recent person is at 1350. Think about that. 1350 is our most recent haplogram. The reason for that
We're
is,
due for a mutation.
oh, they probably are there, and you probably haven't. The issue is there are not enough testers, additional testers, to collaborate or to calculate it, I'll say. Okay. With more testers, that would change. So what would happen is you probably have a genetic mutation, I'm going to say 1800, but there's nobody else that has that has tested. When somebody else comes along and tests, that 1350 would go to 1800 or whatever the appropriate number is. This is where, especially the Joseph group needs more testing. So this is part where my comments a couple days ago were coming from.
Is your login for Family Tree DNA your kit number?
Yes.
All right. So then I am 445238.
Yep. So that's you. And you're one of the greens, so that fits.
And I was worried whether the mailman had something to do with this. I was really felt good when I got this information.
Well, and maybe the mailman had a lot of Callaways.
Oh, so maybe my dad wasn't a Callaway, but the mailman was.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna be nervous again.
Yes, there you
I
go.
was gonna look and see if I could see which one was.
Oh,
You know his number?
well, we've ruled out one, so it would be one of the other two.
He's the top one.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, he's the top one.
So what you're saying is you recognize your number, but it doesn't have your name on your result.
Correct.
Right. This is part of the personal
So,
information.
and just so you
section.
know, kind of the flow here, we had a DNA, or CFA event in, I think it was Roanoke, if I remember right, but Jennifer Zink had presented, and then they offered those of us that were there a discount on one of the Y tests. So they were doing swabs right there. I said, sure, I'll do it. So I paid whatever it was, $25, $49, something. And we did one of the much smaller Y tests. And then as they got doing the project, they said, hey, based on what we've seen, we would like, I think we paid for 2 or 3. The project and the CFA would like to do a big Y test on yours. You approve that? I said, sure. So this big Y was funded by the CFA for their research activity.
And that's like $700? Is that
I
what you
don't
said?
remember the price. I know it was on an earlier slide.
I
But
think
it's
from
still
what I saw there,
150,000.
it
It's
was
still
big Y?
150,000
The big
years
one.
off.
It's like 450 cents.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
The chemist, the biological stuff goes back on.
So, David, thank you for bringing that up. FTDNA runs sales, especially around holidays. So if you choose to do it, hit a sale. Just keep an eye on the website and look for
I
a
think
sale.
the upgrade from what I remember, what Fred was saying, to go up from scratch, I don't know what, if you went big wide.
You thought it was 4?
Well, I thought when it
It was
was posted up there, it was
$4.59 or something.
$4.59, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know what the sale would be, but it would be less than that.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
No.
Okay.
How are we doing on time, Don?
Well, I think people have enough fun, keep going.
Okay. So what's up with the Callaways and the Kindles? This is David's question.
Years away from.
Oh, I see cameras go up on this one.
Yeah.
Dave, this is going to start to answer your
Okay,
question. Okay. So what's that? Okay.
There they are.
we're waiting for the big reveal.
So this is a map.
One.
This is a map that you get with big Y. You don't get it with regular Y. You don't get it with the autosomal. You only get this with the big Y test, and it is fairly new from FTDNA, and it is quite cool. Let's see if I can read this. So along the top, that's 200 CE. So the year 200, 400, 1400, 1800, 2000. Okay, so that's our time frame. So what this says is there was a common ancestor who is not on the screen, came down, and there was a haplogroup. Here's the, unfortunately I can't read that. Let me step back so I can, I'm in the wrong place, that's why. I'm looking for a pointer.
So is there any way that we can trace it back to Callaway Golf Club and then bring it back? Well, somewhere we got ties. They gave us money at one time. We need to revisit that connection.
Okay, so up here we have an ancestor. It's FGC 43441.
Yeah.
Can you read that, Don?
I can, which one do you want?
That one.
No.
You can't read it?
Can you expand it on
Looks
your
like-
computer screen? Don't touch the blog.
I could if I change the mode that I'm in. It almost looks like an FOC 43.
No, actually I want the English.
Can you, with your fingers?
The number you read was right.
Okay, so around 1449, that's what that's saying. So this is just the English explaining that ancestor. It ends in 4344, this ancestor, ends in 43441.
Okay.
There were numerous mutations that occurred. Notice that is around 1449. So around 1449, there was a mutation that they can see in the DNA. We come down, now we're at 43442, and now we're up to the year 1586. So in 1586, there was a split. And here's where things get kind of interesting. So we have two Callaway tests. Let me look at my screen here. We have two Callaway tests. Those are the two big Y tests that are in the project. Okay? That was a break that occurred about 1853.
This is the Joseph line.
No, this is all Peter.
Oh, Peter line.
We don't have this information for
Got it.
Joseph.
All right, that's good.
Okay, we don't, this is why we need more Josephs.
Okay.
But these are the two Peter big Y tests, and that break occurred about 1853. Okay, the interesting thing is we have Kindle tests off that same ancestor. We have Kindle tests. I am one of those. Tim, who lives in Washington State, is the other one. And I know through my source records that we are appropriately related. So here we have the Kindles and the Kindles, and the Callaways. What I didn't mark is this one. That is the most fascinating result that we've gotten to date. It's a Kindle. It's another Kindle who lives in Dorset. He has since passed away. I have been working with his daughter. Okay, so if I have pronouns and I'm starting to say her and she, it's because she's got her dad's test. It's like, well, women can't do a Y test. So what we end up with is a match up here. She did not put the country in, but we have a Kindle here, and we have Kindles here, and Callaways are kind of sandwiched in the middle.
We're surrounded.
We're surrounded, yes. So the question then is, what's right? Are we Callaways or are we Kindles?
Why couldn't we be Callaway's? You know, further down the line.
Yeah, but the surnames don't
merging with
change.
Kindles and merging, you know, and then.
The surnames don't change.
But you're in 1850s, right?
Right.
So we had Callaways in the 1400s.
Yeah. Okay. So getting.
But it could be a different tree.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
No. I'll give you the answer.
I'll give you the right
Kindles
answer
came
before he
into the
gives you
family
the real
twice.
answer. I'll
Okay,
give
what's
you
the real
right
answer?
The right answer is they were all Callaways, and some crazy Kindles got this wild hair to change their name right at that split. So when we get done with this, all the Kindles will have to just recognize they're really Callaways.
You know,
There we go.
Callaways.
And pay $35
And pay
membership.
$35.
The Kindles married back into the family twice.
There you go.
Or
Yeah, the Callaways are the good ones. You gotta watch out for those Kindle boys. So anyway, so we get because we have more tests in Peter and in the Peter group, we can get a lot of information gleaned out of this. And now we also know that mysterious Kindle test up there is a family that has lived in Dorset, England for many hundreds of years. They haven't moved. And some of the family lived in Devon, which is the county next, and Cornwall. So we know that we are all connected. But how? And so earlier we asked for additional big Y testing within the Peter group. We know, unfortunately, both of these genetically, or by generations, these two Callaways that did the big Y testing are actually fairly close. And so we don't get a whole lot of information out of that, other than that there was a mutation that occurred.
Yeah.
The general rule on a big Y test is you don't want to, if you're wanting to get the bigger picture, you generally don't want to test within third cousins or less. Or, let me rephrase, third cousin or greater, you do want to test.
You don't get as much new information.
Yeah, if you test your brother, you'll get information, but not a whole lot. Whereas if you go to at least third cousin, maybe second cousin, or greater, then you're going to get much more information.
is it easier to triangulate, or is that sort of?
No, the results are so close, and the dates are going to be kind of stacked here at the end.
Well, I mean, if they're
Anyways.
further apart, if you're
Yes.
using further apart, it's easier to triangulate.
Right, yeah. So what happens is this tree branching will be bigger if you're at least three third cousins apart.
What is the Red Cross? Is that Sweden?
England.
England? That doesn't look like the British Jack. The one above that looks like the Jack.
That's the
It's
St.
England
George's
and
Cross.
Ireland.
Okay.
St. George's Cross.
Oh, and then somebody did the UK flag.
Yeah.
Probably those Kendall boys.
Hey, what causes the mutation?
They're
Is it disease,
mutate-
is it
no. They're
adaptation?
random. According to Darwin, mutations are totally random.
Boy, that opened up a can of worms.
So we cannot do that same kind of thing and get the something that gives us that much information from Joseph, because the people who have tested are in line. with each other.
The
and they're
vertical
close.
access doesn't mean anything, it's just the number of tests, I mean, there's nothing,
Right, those are just numbered tests.
yeah, so vertical.
Yeah.
Well,
It's-
is there an advantage to being one or the other?
Do you
Historically,
mean being a Callaway or a Kendall?
to be a Joseph or
About
a
$10.
It's
Depends which side you're on.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay out of that. We'll have Callaway
I was
war.
just, you know, I mean, there may be more wanted posters out there. And,
On DNA, the advantage is Peter, because there's more information.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
the
what-
idea
I don't know
that
what kind of
we're
advantage
upgrading
you're
some of the
talking about.
tests, because, so in the Peter line, we have some wide tests, but we wanna upgrade those that we think are not in the exact line of the two that we have.
Yeah, and the next slide is gonna speak to that.
Okay. Okay.
We're getting there.
And while I'm thinking about it, this is a total tangent back to the autosomal test for just a second, and I'm gonna that may cause confusion, but I don't wanna forget it. If someone is older, I would highly recommend that they do an autosomal test. So I did autosomal testing in Ancestry, okay, and I got good results. Before my uncle died, I had him test. He's a generation closer, and that generation can make a big difference on the autosomal tests. It's not so much on the Y tests, because the time frame is much bigger.
Yeah, their
So-
children could give you as much information. as
Yes.
much,
and
Yeah.
so who do you
But
go,
the autosomal, that can make a big difference.
who do you go to get the autosomal test?
You just sign up for Ancestry and they send it to you.
You could do Ancestry, or you could do the Family Finder within FTDNA.
We've done it. Mary, yeah.
Okay, I wanted to remember that, because as generations are passing away, that autosomal DNA is lost.
Right.
Okay, let's move to the next. This answers the question. So this is the Peter line. This is Peter. I can't read. Does that say John?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so John, and what we've got is, I believe it's these two tests. They're the ones that did the big Y. And so because their lineages are so close, it would have been better to go to the other branches. So for example, if I came over here to this Joseph, excuse me, that's John. If I picked a son from Edward, and I picked that test, now I can get more information on John. I'm still under John, I'm sorry. If I
Go
pick,
one more level.
yeah, if I pick William, and I were to upgrade one of these, now I can get information on Peter. Okay, because they don't join until Peter. So that's why you want to
Peter John Edwards.
spread these out.
That's why we want those on the other sons we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why, to put that in the reverse form, that's why we're not looking for more people in the John group, because we've got probably good information that people want to
Your Peter
test.
John Edward.
There's some
okay.
value in it, but not as great as trying to spread it out.
Yeah, so the request was somebody in the Edward line
Yep.
and somebody in the Ebenezer line.
And I would actually, it's not within current scope, but there's a Peter count. I think the first son was Peter. If we upgraded that test, that's even further back.
And you wanna get one over.
And the same thing over there. Yeah,
Am I
that's why
understanding,
we spread this
am I
stuff out.
understanding this right, that when you say upgrade, what you're really saying is they've already got all the information, we just have to buy the rest of it?
Yes.
No.
They got a
Then what do you mean by upgrade? Because you don't have to go back and
I
test.
think FTDNA actually uses a different chip in the processing, computer chip, and they are doing much broader testing. It's not like they have those results now and they're just keeping them from us until we pay the upgrade. They actually have to run the tests.
In other words, they're storing our DNA.
Right.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yep. I have upgraded a number of tests for people. I had one that the DNA sample was no longer any good. And so the upgrade didn't take.
But see, that's
But
why.
all of the others we were able to upgrade.
But see, that's why I said yes, if we pay them, they don't have to submit another sample.
Now, that's true.
Yeah, is that what you meant? Do they have to submit
I'm not
another
sure
sample?
You're both right, yeah.
What he
I,
said
it just
earlier,
sounded to me like they're running the whole test and then you buy a piece of it.
No.
You're saying they're storing the DNA and then if
Yes.
you upgrade, they gotta go back and find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Process it again.
Well,
And process it again.
they store enough DNA for 2 tests.
Last week.
There's 2 swabs.
But
No.
so they're
There's only
redoing
one
the
swab.
test.
I think there's only one spot.
I thought I had 2.
Maybe you had two. I mean, it's been long enough ago that I
that's
don't
what
think
we're
that's
doing.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so if you do an upgrade, and you do start from 0, the time frames are about, if you subtract the mail time, the snail mail time, the processing time is the same.
so
And so that
what,
tells me they're actually running the test.
so why don't we contact that guy and say, hey, we came up with some money, if, you know, we'd like to have you do the bid.
That's what he's doing.
That's what we're gonna do. So
Okay.
we approved somebody on the Edward line and somebody on the Ebenezer line, we're gonna fund those first. And the project's gonna go out and try to find one of those folks that would be willing to do that. They've already got a couple identified that have got tests, I'm hoping that they're CFA members, we're not sure. Revis is gonna send me their names, so I'm gonna check, cause I'd love to have it. I'm much more willing to be collaborative as a CFA member with anything you need. I hope those folks are. And then I imagine we'll see a request after this to say, hey, we'd like to go get some kits for William and Peter II there.
Peter II. Yes, that's exactly
The
right.
descendant of Peter the Great.
Yep.
That the first descendant.
Yep. And so, so we had a lot of questions in an earlier meeting.
Yes, that's
Why are,
ours.
why are we trying to upgrade
This
these
is a
people?
great picture.
Yeah, and so this chart is on the CFA website, and it is probably 8 years old. And so we've actually got a lot more testers. I just grabbed what was
I
on the
just feel
CFA
real
site.
bad for the genealogist doing the paper trail search. When they try to find male Callaway, that's a lot of male Callaways.
Yeah.
Between.
Yeah, and wait till you get to the unknown.
Oh, the unknown Callaway.
Yeah.
I found the will for unknown Callaway.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
I'll share it with you, I got a copy.
Excellent. Yeah, there are a variety of things that need to be updated on the CFA site. This is one of them. So there's a similar chart for Joseph, which I did not include. The thing about Joseph is we need just general testing. The number of Joseph testers does not give us this kind of view to figure out how do we go.
So one of the things I'd like to ask,
Yeah.
I would love to get something in a podcast or something in a newsletter calling all Joseph Callaway descendants. Should you consider getting a Y test? And hopefully one with some of the larger chromosome samples and sharing it
Yep.
with our project.
And that's the critical part.
Yeah, so I think we
Sharing with the
make that
project.
ask. We may have a bunch of folks who voluntarily go.
Well, yeah, but they can share it anonymously, I think that's a
Oh,
good
it's
plus.
gonna come in anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, for privacy reasons, that's why these are just kit numbers, because these are probably mostly living people. So for privacy
And as a
reasons.
project administrator, you don't know who it is. All you got is a kit.
No, I've got it.
You do.
I do
So
have
when
the
they-
information.
So when they do share it, he would have as a.
I will have, Revis
I
and
would think somebody sooner or later would have to have a name on
well, Revis and I both have the
As soon as
information.
you submit it to the project.
When you join the Callaway family project, Revis and I gain insight, and we can see, visibility, and we can see all of that person's results.
it. Yeah.
Okay, we are obviously sworn to secrecy though, and
Wow.
totally respect privacy.
Is there a
How
way
many
to, is there
companies-
no way to upgrade to get to crack?
Can he be bought? I don't know if there's that much information
No,
to share.
he won't crack.
Well, Google could do it.
There you go.
Okay, that's a reference to a private, unrelated
A lunch
conversation.
joke.
Question?
So would you, as the
Oh, I'm
project
sorry.
manager, oh, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
We'll come back.
As the
My bad.
project manager for you, could you reach out to people and say, we're asking
He is.
Yeah, we've had that conversation. We have a bit of an obstacle that we've got to work through. Revis can do it because she has been part of it for a period of time and people know who they are. When I do it as Perry Osborn, they're like,
Makes it look
who
like
are you?
Yeah.
So we've got to work through that. So I have reached out to a lot of kits in Callaway, and my response rate is very low. And I think it's because of my last name. I'm not Callaway.
And if we need to ultimately do a more formal ask from the CFA, let me know. I'm happy to put my name on that ask.
Yeah, let's look at that. Okay, question. So I did it again.
You did it again, Gabby.
I'm
Joe,
sorry.
go.
Joe's been
Joe.
having his hand up over here.
Silence.
There's another progressive.
Okay.
Oh, get that beat.
Turn the sound down.
Okay, let's focus here.
We'll focus on Joe.
Joe?
Good job, buddy.
We're gonna get down to the real question. Can we come up with a dollar figure of what the CFA would need to invest to get these people to test? I'm talking about the left and the right side of your chart there. If we said we wanna try to find 3 people, 5 people, I don't know how many we even got, but,
Yeah, I could do that. So given these kit numbers, I could look at them and I can see who they are. I may ask Revis to contact them. But yeah, and I could, before we contact them, I could calculate the dollar figure excluding the sale. So, because I don't know what the sale would be.
and is that the only resource we have, is those individuals?
No, there may be more. The question would be how do we know who goes back to whom? So somebody took the time and effort to put this chart together and knows that this person goes to Peter II. Somebody did that. It wasn't me. And likewise across. Otherwise, I just have a kit number.
Yeah.
I don't know what their genealogy is.
Okay.
You know what their biology is they do, but somebody has said,
Yes.
here's the path
Yep.
genealogically.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I know the bio. So there are lots of Callaway tests out there, but they don't say who their ancestor is. And so, I mean, I can try to figure out which line they are, and I can try to update this chart. There's probably some value in that. But at least for this test and the few tests down there, I could calculate a dollar
But
figure.
that does raise a comment though, Harry, that there is if somebody weren't 100% accurate in their genealogical research, they may say, I'm a descendant of Edward, and you find that later I was really a descendant of Ebenezer.
That's right.
And so that you're gonna get a test and say, well, here's the Edward data, and then later you get 2 or 3 other Edwards and, no, something isn't right here.
Yeah.
You align more with the Ebenezer line, you really go over here. So
Right.
we may find some of those too.
Yep, there can be some shifting.
Okay.
You gotta watch out for the mailman.
Up till today, I thought I was one or the other. Now you're saying that there's a lot of other subgroups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Maybe are a part of something else.
well, the two main ones he said in the Callaway
Well, you're not
project.
Peter's son, right?
Huh?
You're not Peter's son. There was a whole lot of people
How
in
would I
between.
know? I'm
Well,
still
so I
tossing the coin.
think what Harry said is there's, based on the project and looking at the haplogroups, majority of the test kits align into one of those 2 major haplogroups. And one of them is what we know are the Peter, and one of them is what we know as a Joseph. There are some other folks who, their biology says you're in one of those 2, but they don't know their lineage as to how they got there. They know they're part of the Peter, or they know they're part of the Joseph, but they don't know the descended from who part after Peter and Joseph. And then there are other folks who, we don't know which group they're in yet, right? They've submitted their kit to the Callaway project, but they don't align at this point with either Peter or Joseph.
Okay.
So they may be part of, they either may have parent data, or there's another real Callaway out there.
The unknown
Lines, the
Callaway.
unknown
Or there's a-
Callaway.
So what
Or
does
there
it-
was an
what does
Kindle.
it take, what does it take to remedy that problem? What does it take?
Research.
How many people?
Well, we're saying research, it really takes the number of people doing the kits, taking the test. The bigger the group, the better the data.
And doing their genealogies.
And some people.
And then realizing that, okay, I have the Callaway name, but I seem to be in a group by myself. Oh, wait a minute. What was the postman's last name?
Kendall.
I set that up. I set that up. That was good. That was unintentional.
Well, I understand, but so what if we just adopt a project that everybody in our current family is gonna get tested?
Well, again, on a Y test, I would only recommend one person within second cousins, third cousins. They need to be spread out. You can do siblings, you can do first cousins, but the value that you're going to get is, so if these people all tested, or descendants of this person all tested, they're probably all going to be in the same group, the same area. You're not getting much bang for your buck. Is when you jump between the big branches that you get the new haplogroups. Okay, in the interest of time, before we go to the next slide, go back. Before we go to the next slide, so my understanding, there's question about this. Surnames evolved around 1300, largely for taxing purposes. The king or whatever wanted his taxes, and so surnames, there were too many Bobs running around, and so surnames evolved largely for taxation purposes, so the king could get his money. But people didn't take it seriously, and they adopted at different rates. And so when we look, if I'm looking at the Peter line now, if I look at Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, they were very Celtish. They were seafaring people, very closely aligned with Ireland, and they spoke a Celtish language. And so as they've gone back into the old records, they can see the old Celtish. And so they didn't really take surnames seriously. Okay, the king says we have to take a surname, so okay. And people just grab names at random, whether they were related or not. And so if I'm a blacksmith or a whitesmith or whatever smith, we all took Smith, but we're not related. We're all genetically, there would be a common ancestor, but it may be a long way ago. Okay, took the name according to your profession. You may have taken it according to geography. Callaway is a region in Normandy in France. I have Montgomerys in my family, and I understand Montgomery is a place in France. And so people just took names. And in fact, within siblings back then, you probably would find the same surname, but if you went to first cousins and second, they all had different names. You might be genetically related or not. It was really fluid. But then something else happened as part of this, and that is, if I'm a farmhand and I'm a Callaway, and I decide I'm going to put out my services and go work for Mr. Kendall down the street and help on his farm, well, I just took an alias. I'm Callaway Kendall. That's kind of fluid. It just kind of mishmash. Okay, let's go ahead. And so this is where aliases come from. This is off Family Search, and the slide includes the URL at the top so people can find it. And so what we see in the records is people taking aliases, and they actually say alias, Kendall alias Callaway, and it became really fluid. Now I want to take a side step, actually a back step, because I need to give credit. Over on the Kendall project, there was somebody who was a clerk, totally unrelated to us, okay? There was a clerk, And she invested years of research into this and stumbled on the aliases and saw that the Kendalls and the Clarks were aliases of each other. Well, the Kendall Project learned about this, and Scott Kendall and I started talking. He's like, I wonder if the same thing is going on between the Callaways and the Kendalls. And lo and behold, that's what we can thank Warwick and Les for, because the records that they found prove this to be true.
Wow.
Okay, so these particular Kendalls and the Peter Callaway group, probably the entire Peter Callaway group, fall into this. Okay, the names are interchangeable.
So they're all Callaways, but some took an alias of Kendall. All right, we got it.
You gotta watch out for those Kendall
Yeah,
names.
Callaway. Funny.
Okay, is this making sense?
That's fascinating. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank
so I would encourage, if you're interested, Family Search has a wonderful article on it, the use of aliases, familysearch.org. So you've got the URL at the top. Okay, let's go to the next page where it gets a little bit more interesting. Well, look at this. We've got K-E-L-E-W-A-Y, Callaway alias Clark. Callaway alias Clark. Callaway alias Kendall. So there's the Kendall and the Callaway. Clark alias Kendall, or Callaway. Clark. So there are Clarks and Callaways.
Right.
So we could have some Clark matches.
Yeah.
So the names are fluid. They're going back and forth. And this is where I started with the thank you to, in particular, to Les and Warwick for this, because they threw the net open wide and collected the records. And because of that, we can see, oh, aliases. This is why we have what I appear to be Kendall going to Peter 1640, Callaway.
So do we know at this point, are there any of the folks was there a Clark family project? Did you say you became part of that?
Not for Callaway, but for Kendall.
But any of those Clarks, if they had a match in our project, they would know there was a kit match.
Well, we may not know, to be honest, because we've got a lot of stragglers, and I'm just going to say we don't know at this point. Based on Callaway alias Clark, I'm going to guess that there are some.
Right.
We don't know if they've tested. We don't know if they've joined a group. That we're just in a space that don't know with that.
But I guess what I was asking here, if, let's assume somebody out there that's a Clark surname, with one variation of it,
Right.
has done a test.
Right.
In their test results, is there any way they would know that there's this Callaway family project that somebody over there you're matched with, or another kit that you're matched with?
Yeah, so when you go in and you join a project, you can say, I want to join projects.
And how would they know to ask to join the Callaway
Matches.
project? Okay.
So in my match list, I seem to have some Callaways. Maybe I should join the Callaway family project. That's how they would know.
And how would they know they're Callaways? Because we said that's private. They know they're Callaways because they're part of this Callaway project group?
It's based on ancestor.
Okay.
So if you want, you can plug in your ancestor, and so then you know. Otherwise, you're right. Otherwise, it's kit number.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah. So when I did my initial Y test, it's like, why am I matching all these Callaways? Oh, is there a Callaway family project? Let me go join that.
Got it.
And that's what I did.
So we may have some other rogue characters.
There
show
could be
up
some
any
other
day.
rogue
Okay.
that really are the same. And this is where earlier I said surnames are kind of superfluous,
Yeah.
because it's really the DNA that we're looking at. These are old church records. You'll notice that the URL at the top is Les. This is her. And I intentionally included the URLs so people can pull this information up. So this is how we end up with the Kendalls and the Callaway. So just to kind of put these things in perspective, we have the Joseph Peter question, and we now know they're what, 5,000 years apart for the most recent common ancestor, MRCA. So that's one issue. And then here is the Kendall Callaway
Yeah.
question. And then the windows, David, and the church, you had spellings that looked kind of close to these
Yeah.
with the Callaway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I spoke up and said, look at those windows and remember those names because. So remember, there were two problems with these church records. The literacy rate was very low. Okay, and so it's like I have no idea how to spell my name, and so the priest or the whatever just made up stuff. Okay. Number two, Webster had not written his dictionary yet. English wasn't standardized, and so you could use whatever spelling. That's why Callaway is with a K, with a Q, with a C, with an A or an L, an A or an O for vowels. It's all over the board.
I looked at that, there must be 100 different ways.
Yeah, so all of that feeds into this, and now we're looking at records that are probably in the 1600s, very old church records. Thank you, Warwick and Les. They grabbed this information not realizing, as far as I know, not realizing what they were looking at. It wasn't until DNA came along and we were able to start to piece this together. And my guess is, 50 years from now, this is going to look like a child.
That's really cool.
So this was all extracted from the stuff that was gathered by our ladies when they were running around?
No, Les was not one of the ladies, was she?
That's true. But
I don't know.
She went through the data from the ladies? That this come from our?
I don't know.
She just found it to look. She probably did that herself.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know the group went over, but I don't know what they were able to produce.
Okay.
So, but I do know that Les has, I don't know, is Les male or female?
Female.
Female, okay, I don't know. So she put her stuff on her own webpage and it's available to everyone. And thank goodness she cast the net wide. She just went and reported the church records.
So I'll give just a little quick snippet here. So Leslie's been working with us for a long time. She's been a member a long, long time. And, we'd love to want to get her over here. We were hoping someday we'd be able to do that. But of course that never worked out. It's very expensive. And then the pandemic came around. And one of the fringe benefits, or there were benefits, silver linings came out of it. We had to have Zoom meetings. Wait a minute, since we're doing a Zoom meeting, there's no reason Leslie couldn't participate with us. We had a couple great meetings where Leslie joined in with us and we got to see her face to face and have some great. So I officially met Leslie because of the corona.
Yeah.
Very
So
good.
we get together, so.
Very good. So that's wonderful, and we can see how these pieces are coming together as a result. Okay? Now for the Peter question. Scott Kendall is the administrator for the Kendall Family Project, and he is a firm believer that this is Peter Callaway, based on the Kendall Callaway question. And so this record is at a family search. It did not include the URL, but you've got enough information that you could go look at it. And so here we cite this record in the Dorset Parish Records. So we've got a Peter Kennel, right in the right area, so that helps. And so we have Peter, parents John and Redigon. Sometimes the RE is not there, it's just Redigon. Born March 22nd, 1639 in not just Dorset, but Marnhull, which is where my match is, my DNA match is. And so we're right in the right place. And so Scott is firmly convinced that based on the aliases, you put a couple pieces together here, this is Peter 1640.
Wow.
And if you really want to blow your mind, go to the next. There is the church record. It's barely readable. It's barely
Get
readable.
rid of all these Peter folks.
We just gotta get them to change their name to Callaway, because they screwed up sometime and messed it up, so.
So if the Joseph Callaway group does a bunch of big Y testing,
Well, I hope we find
we
the silver
can do this kind of stuff. So what we do know, keep in mind, what we do know is the Peter group and the Joseph Group both came through that landmass between England
Yeah, well, yeah,
and
here in
Benelux.
Czechoslovakia.
I'm sorry?
It changed in Czechoslovakia.
Oh, yes, okay.
That's really cool.
That is cool.
It is
Yeah, that's really
fascinating.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I have to tell you, I got shivers up my spine when I saw this record. I don't know, there's a competing idea that, and you'll see it out on some trees. And I don't remember the names, but that person has put together the lineage Peter back to Dorset also, but to different people. We don't know. Again, this is where we need not more testing out of the US, but we really need English testers.
So if we do enough Joseph tests,
You might find
we can
similar-
find Joseph Senior's father. And it could be Edmund or it could be
With a
someone
bunch of
else.
strokes of luck.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this takes luck.
Yeah.
So it's, as I just said, it won't be just the US people testing, which we need, but also people in England, particularly that have lived in the same place for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let me just throw this in there.
Joe?
I don't remember who reported on this, but in one of our discussions, one of our meetings several years back, when we started the DNA project, which I was not involved, but they were buying kits, paying for the kits for people to test. And they got some people over in England to go around and try to get Callaways to test.
Yep.
And they had a problem with it because of a lack of trust, confidentiality.
Fair.
Those issues
That's
were very
fair.
strong among those people, whereas in the US, we were a lot more open to doing DNA testing.
Yep, that's fair.
Les, I believe, reported, maybe on the Zoom meeting we had with her, that had lightened up some. Now, that
We might be able to.
may have changed some with all the COVID stuff and everything else, but we were in COVID at that time when I think that's when she made that statement. So there is a possibility that this, new project that Donald has brought to us today produces all these new members, we might be able to give us money, we can go back into the business and try to get those people to take it.
Yeah, there would be a couple of challenges. It would be easier if there are people in England asking other English people.
Right.
The trust level would be much higher. So if we can somehow facilitate that
They
would help
think
this.
David's English, so we'll send him.
There you go.
Well, not only
This-
that, Harry has found connections there that still
Right.
I
live there.
have,
Let's
yep.
get him to go leverage his family to
That's
go out
right.
and knock door to door.
And I've got an ongoing conversation with
Any of your family in Hobart?
No.
Pretty direct folks.
How do you get?
No, let me just finish my thought. The second major obstacle is the EU has very strict privacy laws. And so, I don't know, but we may run into the EU privacy laws.
That's true too.
They may be still mad because we split them.
They could, well, actually, some of them are. Some of them are.
Bartlett,
Hobart.
you gotta tell Dave, he asked me that.
Somebody gave
Okay, I've got just a couple more minutes, because here are some key resources for you. This is the Callaway Family Association, our pears and nippers. Under links, there is a wealth of information.
Yep.
Okay, so if you're doing your own work, I just wanted to highlight that as a
And by the
resource.
way, so links is information that's not stored on our site, but there are links to other sites that contain information for the Callaways or Troop County Archives, so those are linking you to somebody else's web destination.
Okay, and then the final slide, oh wait a minute, it's not quite the final slide, okay.
This one?
This is Les's site, again, you'll notice the URL. Callaway, families by region. We've got she's put this together, Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, and other areas. And so if you think your family is down in the tail of England, incredible resource.
And I think, I'd have to go double check, but yeah, about the third one down, Leslie Hayes,
Oh.
English Ordinance.
Great.
So I think she's linked from our links page.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I found it by accident. Okay, and then I had totally changing subject, and this is the final slide. I had a question about beneficiary. So if I die, okay, when I die, I have my test, can I set a beneficiary in FTDNA? And so this is a link that will take you to the information, and that's the beginning of it. So because I had that question, I wanted to put that out, put that in the slide deck.
So you would require the beneficiary to submit to the test in exchange for inheritance?
Yes.
In other words, you would, if you were to take the test, you would not be your nominee.
I don't know if you're my
You'd
kid or
find
not.
somebody else. You'd pick somebody else.
Right.
In other words, the gift is conditional upon them doing that test.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. If you want my inheritance, you have to take a test. I like that.
I mean, that is not unusual. I mean,
Sounds like
it may be unusual with dealing with the test, but it is not unusual for the testator to set a qualification for an heir to inherit.
Yeah.
That is very common.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The other that trips something for me, if CFA as an organization pays for somebody to do a DNA test, I would make it conditional on joining the Callaway Family Project.
I think we
Right.
should do that with the 3 kits we just talked about. If
Yeah.
they're not, I hope they are, and I'll double check, but yeah, I think we should make sure they join. I think the ones Revis had said she wants to upgrade are already in the project, that's why she's targeting them to.
Yeah, so we're probably okay there. I saw a hand, there we go.
Does Family Tree DNA ever do like what I would call affiliate links, like if organizations such as ours is paying for DNA testing that they need in order for all this entire thing to work with the subgroup, so they ever offer affiliate stuff, which means we get a little piece of that pie that's being paid. Because it sounds like
I'm
there's
not-
a shortage of testing that needs to take place.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any kind of relationships like that. Now, the closest thing that can trigger is people can donate money to the Callaway Fund within FTDNA. So this is separate from CFA.
Right.
And so there is a general fund in the Callaway Family Project, and then the administrators, based on guidance from the board then, would use that money accordingly. We're gonna upgrade 3 tests. So that money can be used as well as additional money, but that's not really answering your question.
But the groups are, I'm assuming this money flows upward from the individual groups, or am I misunderstanding it?
No, it does not. So if people donate money, it goes to the Callaway Family Project. That does not go to FTDNA.
When you go on the Callaway Family Projects, it actually shows how much money they have on the page.
Right.
That $271 that they
Yeah.
showed the other day, it shows up on that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, no, that's money for the Callaway.
But but the
Family
reality is,
project.
it can only be, it's like buying an Amazon gift card. We gotta spend it on FTDNA for
Right.
other tests and all, so ultimately, they're gonna get it,
Right.
Right,
but we're gonna purchase some of their
so
services.
it does roll up.
Back to them.
Well,
So-
eventually, we're gonna
Well,
spend it there. It's
oh.
holding an Amazon gift card. When you finally
Right.
purchase it, it's gonna go to Amazon.
Yeah, we can
It
spend the
won't go
money.
to another group. Is that what you're asking? Would another group be
Where,
able
how
to get?
far, where does the money flow up to? Where's Daddy at?
It's just like buying the kit, and just like buying any kit. Whether you buy it personally or whether the project buys it, it's you're buying a product from FTDNA.
Right,
So the company is FTDNA.
right.
Answer is-
Their business is running DNA tests, so they only make money because you bought a kit. They're the
So-
manufacturer of a
They,
kit.
they don't really care about getting kids
project.
from different lands, et cetera. They're
No.
just in the business of
Selling
processing.
kits.
And only the groups care about where it's at, so
That's
they
right.
care less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they're just selling a product. It's not money flowing up. It's just buying a product.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not a quick question, but let's say that like, so I'm a Joseph, my brother is in there, Donna's in there, and Russ is in there, and have all 3 done the big. How does that help me? Like, okay, I know we're talking about a bigger issue, but how does that help me
That's a
figure out
good
where we
question.
all come in?
So let me set that.
You asked this a couple days ago.
Yeah, because the challenge she's got, she's got the inverse problem is that she knows
from her biology, she's a Joseph descendant, and
I can only go up so
and
far.
But
they're
you
pretty
can only go
close
so
to
far.
me and Russ, but she can't make the lineage connection now as to which tree am I coming
So does
down.
my DNA match theirs only because of Joseph? Or is there a place that you can look at it and say, no, you guys probably meet up about in here? You know what I'm saying? Or is that more an ancestry or the autos?
Yeah, when I pulled up the little blurb on Joseph, I think it says your most recent common ancestor was like 1350, if I remember correctly. The issue that we have is there are not enough testers. And so as more testers,
What I'm saying, it doesn't help me figure out where.
No, I think it does. I think it does, Nancy, because ultimately, if there's enough testers, right now you can see there's enough matches between myself, Russ, your brother. We know we came down from Joseph, and I haven't looked enough at the matches, or you haven't looked enough to say, well, we're also Joseph William, most likely. And probably Joseph William James, maybe. But I think we could start saying somewhere in here we split, which means we had uncles, but you know, one of my grandfather's brothers was probably. I think we can start, and I think you're saying if you get more tests, it'll be easier to slot your brother in to say he came probably down this line.
So would it be easier in that case if they were on Ancestry and we were just doing the other one, because you said that only goes back so many generations?
yeah, Ancestry won't help with this.
So how does she plug in as a person doing family history research to try to leverage what we're doing? And as we expand this and grow it, how does she plug into the results to try to now
Yeah.
point her in the right place to start trying to chase them?
Yeah, are you, well, number one, become a member within the Callaway Family Association's FTDNA project.
No, I know my brother.
Okay. Well, and you can get access to it as well.
Well,
And then you just keep an eye.
my brother
You
lives
log in as your brother. Yeah.
Smith in this thing.
Yeah.
She
So
impersonates
you
your
can
brother.
keep an eye. The reality is, if one person takes a test,
She identifies as her brother.
Yeah, exactly.
the reality is, if one person takes a test, you end up with something like your most recent common ancestor is 1350. Okay, that's of limited value. But you're contributing. Okay, so now I have a piece, and there may be a branch from 1350 to 2023, and it's a long branch. Okay, but eventually, as others test, so we're helping ourselves and we're helping others. We're helping the other Callaways. We're helping mankind.
But I think that's something we probably think about. So how do we get people like Nancy that say, as we fill this tree out, and how does she get a question in? Because we're not all going to know how to research those branches, or at least they're not presented in a way that we can do that yet. How does she eventually tap into the things we've learned through the project over the coming years to figure out where I'm likely from, so she knows where to search? So how does she consume the data?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, think about that. That's what she's asking.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer.
I think there is a strategy though, as she identifies people that she thinks is kind of the missing link, she asks them to get a test, and then through their
Maybe that
testing,
is the case, yeah.
it becomes clearer and clearer as it evolves. Everything we do is evolutionary.
And Don,
So as she identifies somebody, she's gotta talk them into taking a test.
yeah, Don, you're right, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I did my records research, and I found a third cousin. Okay, well that was outside we didn't show as cousins because the autosomal DNA did not go that far back. But based on the records, it's like, And so I contacted him and I said, I will pay for you to take this test. And fortunately, it came back a match. And so he was actually one of the tests that were
So
listed.
I mean, I can get up beyond anyone who's alive. So I can't, you know what I mean? I'm up to 1790. There's just one spot before I know I can go back. So everyone, I'm past anyone who's alive. Like I know.
Well, I'm gonna shut us down. Tyrone, did you have anything real short this week?
This is kind of related but not related. I don't think we've ever done this, at least not since I've been coming. For even the people who are present, if they want to share it, if they're identifying their Joseph and then all the way down, however many, 5 generations, 6 generations. Because like for myself, you know, I go through Joseph and William. I've never met anybody who's a William. I don't even know if they're in this room. Does that help some people if we just, the people that are here, went from Joseph and went down 6 or 7 generations?
I'm Joseph Wayne.
Yeah, but I'm
Oops.
but I'm a
President,
William.
vice president.
And I've never met anybody who goes from Joseph to William. Not one.
All right, well,
You're a rare
this,
breed.
when we initially started this, first of all, can we give just a appreciation? This was, I want to tell you at the front end of this, when he talked to Joe and all, this was his 30-minute presentation, only about 30 minutes. That was the longest 30 minutes I've ever sat through.
I'm known for that.
In one sense, looking at the watch, it was the longest 30 minutes.